So I'm here at Stanford at the JSK Fellows with Jim Bettinger, who's the director, and we're going to have a discussion on diversity, the benefits, the merits, and how you get there. So Jim, in 2011, in Richard Prince's column, he noted that the fellows there was one Asian fellow, two Latino fellows, and no African American or Native American fellows. 2 years later, you had I think the class had more people of color than white fellows. And I'm wondering, other than, being mentioned in Richard's column, what propelled you to go out and diversify your class?
You're right about the change. In 2013, the class of 2013, we had 13 U.S. fellows and 7 were people of color. This was not, I guess I would say this was not an accident. We worked very hard at this. And let me just step back as to sort of what we were thinking. I mean, it was no fun to have that mentioned in Richard's column, but we were well aware of the absence of African Americans, and actually the following year we went 2 years in a row with no African Americans, and we put more emphasis on recruiting and outreach, and I guess I would say outreach is the key word there. We talked to people who could help us. We talked to you, we talked to Cheryl Conti at Jack and Jill Politics. At your suggestion, we started going to Blogging While Brown and co-sponsoring it, and we basically went through a period where we put ourselves out there and said we are really interested in having African American new media, in particular journalists, because we think it's an important element of our program. I think we might have gotten a little complacent. We've been recruiting for years at ethnic journalism conferences, and we thought we were doing all the right things. I guess I'd put quote marks around that, all the right things. And what happened in 2011 was we realized whatever all the right things were, we weren't doing enough of them.
So I just want to go back. I think that's an interesting point, because we did see you at all the ethnic conventions, and you seemed like you were really doing the right things, but it sounds like what you determined is you had to completely find new networks. And can you talk about what that process looks like and how much effort it takes to find these new networks?
We had been going to the ethnic journalism conferences. We had been advertising in the programs and in the student newspapers. We had been sending flyers to every member of the various associations, and we did realize that it wasn't enough, that it wasn't producing the desired results. And one of the things we recognized was that I don't want to say that NABJ or the other associations are out of too much in the mainstream, but they weren't necessarily attracting the kinds of new journalists that we were after. And so that's why going to Blogging While Brown, which is an association of African American bloggers, some journalists, some not, was important to us. That's why connecting with Cheryl Conti was important to us. It's like any other kind of networking. You go to people you already know and say, I need help with this. Who should I talk to? And every person you talk to, you say, who else should I talk to? Who is it important for us to be known to? I don't think that we've gotten any applicants even out of Blogging While Brown, but by being there, by sponsoring it, I think my premise is that we made it known we were interested in this genre of journalism.
So you used your network to get out of your network and go beyond your network.
I would say we went beyond our existing network. I think of it as expanding our network. And we had, and I think that's where some of the, what I've called complacency came in. We had a network, it had worked for years, and so that's the complacency part. We thought that was enough. One of the other things I would say that we have learned out of this is it's never enough. There's not ever going to be a point where we can say, well, we've done enough, that we have to keep thinking about this all the time. And it's one of a number of things institutionally we think about all the time. We think about improving the program all the time. We are never going to get to a place where we say, well, we've improved the program all we have to. We are never going to get to a place where we say, well, we've expanded our reach as much as we can or need to. On the one hand, you can think of that as being sort of discouraging. I think of it as being sort of liberating, as to saying, well, you can always keep doing stuff, and so that's a great way, for us at least, to approach this particular challenge of diversity, but also everything about the program.
You keep talking about us and we, and as the director, certainly you set the tone, but were there certain things that you had to do and put in place to get the rest of the staff to get on board, buy into, and take the additional steps necessary to continue to diversify the class?
I'm happy to say no, there really weren't. And I would say that is, I will say proudly, that's good hiring. Dawn Garcia, the managing director, is a Latina. She's a former president of JAWS, a Journalism and Women's Symposium. Diversity has been part of her core for years. Pam Maples, same situation. So we started from a premise that we believed in this, that we thought this is important, and that we needed to do more. And so it makes for a harmonious organization when the values are aligned that way.
Okay, so right now, for a lot of people, the conversation around diversity, when you have the conversation around diversity, is really one of window dressing, or around numbers. But can you talk about why it was important to diversify the group and what some of the challenges and the benefits of having a more diverse pool have been?
So I would just say personally that diversity and inclusiveness has been a value of mine since I was a teenager. Back in the 60s when integration was kind of the goal. I don't think of that as a goal now, but this is something that's been important to me for years. And it has been a value that I wanted to bring to the Knight Fellowships. It was already in the Knight Fellowships when I got here, but I wanted to continue it. So the value of it is to me almost simple, which is the more different points of view, different experiences, different backgrounds, different perspectives that you get in an organization, the more likely you are to do good, rich work or have good, rich discussions. I just believe in that with all my heart. The challenge can be that when you get all those different perspectives, there can be people potentially talking past each other rather than with each other. So we're in our discussions, we're very careful at the start of the year, very first day, when we meet with each new group of fellows, we say one of the things that we consider is that the Knight Fellowships is a safe place in the forest. And I stole this concept from the Toni Morrison novel, Beloved. It's a place where we can come and be with each other, where we come with civility and respect for each other, even when we disagree, and maybe especially when we disagree. But then what's important is to listen. And I would say that's been borne out. That we have had richer discussions as we have brought greater diversity to the Knight Fellowships. There are challenges. Several years ago, we had, Dawn and I looked at our incoming group of fellows and we said, wow, this is going to be really interesting, because we had a fellow and his family from rural Pakistan, devout Muslim, and the fellow's wife was not used to being around men who were not her brother, father, or husband, and so there was that family, and then we had a lesbian couple from Brooklyn with 2 children, and there was that family. And we said at the start, it's important for us to understand that there's lots of kinds of family values here, lots of kinds of devotion to family, and it's important to us to learn from each other, and they did. I think that if we had, the potential danger is if you don't set the table that way, then people can start talking, as I say, start talking past each other in ways that are actually detrimental.
In other words, you have to be very intentional about how the conversation is conducted.
Yes, absolutely intentional. You have to really think about it ahead of time. If you think about it, my premise would be, if you think about it and are intentional about what you expect and what the ground rules are here, then you do not have to spend time and energy later trying to undo problems. And we haven't really had problems to be undone. We've been very lucky. And I want to make make one observation, which is, we have a program that has a clean slate. Each selection year is 20 new people, and so we can actually make changes year to year without sort of a residue of what we've already done before, and we take great advantage of that. And we have resources, and we have people who are thrilled to be here. That we've brought them to this wonderful university, and we've given them this opportunity. So they're grateful. So they're happy to be here. They're doing things that they think are important. They're with their family and spending more time with their family than they do at work. So that is a different environment than, say, a newsroom in 2013 that is being asked to do more with less, that is just trying to get the paper out, and under stress and wondering what happens next. So I mean, we have an advantage in that, and we take full advantage of that advantage. We really try to make the most of it. One of the things we hope is that as people leave here, they take that value with them of discussion and differences and diversity, and we'll sort of spread it outside.
Well, I do want to get to the difference between your program and obviously the newsrooms, and you did spend the first half of your career in newsrooms and as an editor. Are there any lessons that you think newsrooms, which are under siege right now, can take from your experience of going from, complacency, no diversity, to a great deal of diversity, given that, of course, newsrooms do not have the resources and do not have the luxury of starting over every year with a whole new crop of people?
I quibble with the word no diversity. We were diverse, but not as diverse as we wanted to be. I'm very reluctant to lecture people in newsrooms now who are working under great challenges and so on. That said, I think I would say, here's what I wish what I'd like to think I was doing if I were in a top newsroom position, which is to look at diversity as a survival strategy, as a way of increasing the appeal of, let's say, a newspaper, increasing the audience of a newspaper by offering a richer portrayal of the area being covered, and doing that by having a richer mix of people doing the coverage. And thinking about not just what slot, let's say if there's an opening, not just what slot is there to fill, but what need do we have? What could we be doing? out here. Well, how can we be expanding our reach, and who can do that? And to some degree, should we, or looking at non-traditional people, people who come from different backgrounds, and with journalism chops. I don't mean that doing on-the-job training necessarily, but looking for people who aren't the sort of the standard issue journalist. And let me give you an example from, this is doesn't having to do with ethnic or racial diversity, but another kind of diversity. When I was city editor at the Riverside Press Enterprise in Southern California, one of the most effective reporters in our newsroom was a young woman who was a single mother, had not finished college, but was the first person we've ever had covering education who had children in school. And the range of stories that we got because she had children in school and therefore heard things and knew things that others didn't hear was a great demonstration to me of how diversity in all its manifestations is really important to covering a community. And so I think of people who are who are young, who are old, men, women, gay, lesbian, African American, Latino, Asian, come from a working class background, come from elite background, the whole range of things. And I just think that contributes to a richer report, and I have to believe in my heart of hearts that a richer report is a strategy for survival.
It's a strategy that you've used here at the fellowship, and it seems like it's really, as an advisory board member and as someone who travels around the country, it seems like from what I'm hearing, it's, I don't want to say revitalized, but it has really reinvigorated the image of the program. Would you say that has been the case?
I would, and we spent a lot of time, it's about 6 years ago now, planning for what we should become. And without going to all the background details, but in 2005, 2006, when the news business was getting seriously disrupted, we decided we needed to retool ourselves for the future, and we ended up with five strategies. And one of them was to greatly expand the notion of who was appropriate for the Knight Fellowship. We had concentrated almost exclusively on what are now called legacy news organizations, people who came with a leave of absence and went back to those news organizations. And we wanted to look at a much wider group of people. So we had already begun to reach out to ethnic media, or diaspora media as it's sometimes called. But we wanted to reach out to journalism entrepreneurs. We wanted to reach out to people who had a keen interest in journalism but might not themselves be practicing journalists. And it was all of the premise that if you get smart people from different perspectives and backgrounds in the room, the discussion will be richer, the solutions will be better. And I think that's proven to be the case. This year is our most diversified group of fellows ever. It's 8 people of color and four whites. We have in our 20 fellows, we have 1 white male born in the United States, which is pretty astounding. And I think it reflects the United States. It reflects the world, and I'm glad to have that. Having the different perspectives allows different kinds of learning, different kinds of problem solving. This is the way Stanford approaches things too. Stanford is known for putting different people from different disciplines together. So there was two professors, one an art professor, one a law professor, who created a course and a book on art law, the law of art. Had people from the business school and the engineering school collaborate. There's a grant program in bioengineering, and the sort of prerequisite is that it has to be two people. They have to be from different disciplines, and they have to never have worked together before. And the idea is you force, or you, I won't say force, but you provide incentives for people of different backgrounds and thinking to collaborate. And so what we're doing is really of a piece with that. But the invigorated part is totally right. It is just totally cool to come to work every day and to see this and to be part of these fellows and be with them and to see what they're doing, to see what they're creating. It's very, very exciting for me. I thought I had the best job in the world before, but it's got even better.
You keep talking about the richness of the diversity brings to the table. Can you give some examples of how the conversation has shifted, how the dynamics have shifted, some things that you do not think would have happened if you had, and I apologize for saying no diversity earlier, but if you had the limited diversity that you had previously?
I remember one conversation last year when a couple of fellows who came out of legacy organizations were not quite bemoaning the loss of what had happened, but we're talking about the kind of journalism that had been done earlier in their careers as being highly desirable, and an African American television producer countered with that, said basically that journalism had not been very good for her people. And I don't know that that's anything that they had heard before. They might have, but it was in a conversation. And again, we start from this premise that there's respect and civility in the conversation. So it's not a harsh attack. It's a here's another way to look at that. And that's so important, I think, is to have let these established narratives exist, but let's say there's some other ways of looking at this. And even people don't have to be persuaded that one or the other's right. I'm not sure that both can't be right, but to say that there's at least another way of looking at this. And I think that kind of perspective, that kind of enlightenment, I'll call it enlightenment even, is really valuable, because when you go out into the world again, and our fellows know they're kind of in a bubble here, but when you go out into the world again, having a greater sensitivity to realities that are not your own is really important. Really, really important. I think it's important for everybody, but it's especially important for journalists.
And why is it especially important for journalists?
Because it's our job to both reflect the world and offer a window into the world. And and to continue the analogy, if that window is clouded, or if that window is too narrow, or if that window only opens in one direction, we're going to give a false picture. And that's what I would call it, a false picture. All journalism requires selection, and you're going to report some things and not others. But if you don't even know about the other things, you're going to present a false picture.
Well, Jim, I have to say, when I talk to a lot of people, and you know this from talking to people in the industry, when you get to the subject of diversity, a lot of people it seems like it's a very difficult conversation, almost a depressing conversation. You seem to be having a lot of fun with it. Is there any last advice you have for all of us about how we can shift this conversation from one of sort of, one that focuses on challenges and deficits, to get to the place where you are?
I'm reluctant to lecture newsroom editors who are really challenged. But the thing I would say is, and this again is a Stanford kind of approach on thing, which is looking on situations like this as an opportunity as opposed to a problem lets you be more excited about trying to take advantage of it. And I'm not trying to be Pollyannish here. I'm not trying to say, oh, just look on the bright side, because I don't really believe that. What I believe is that, as they say in the D school, constraints breed innovation. And that trying to figure out not just like how can we survive with this, but how can we thrive with this? How can we turn this to our advantage? How can we change the terms of engagement? And I would say specifically on diversity. I heard a woman from Blogger talk at Blogging While Brown, and she said that the 3 keys were to value diversity, to prioritize diversity, and to ask for help when you need it. And to me, asking for help when you need it is one of the most important elements. I mean, one of the reasons we were able to do what we did is we asked for help. We didn't say, I don't think there's anything else we can do. We didn't say, I'm embarrassed, we haven't done better. I was embarrassed, but we didn't sort of hide in that embarrassment. And the point that this woman made, I'm sorry I've forgotten her name now, was that you won't be seen as weak, you'll be seen as strong. You won't be seen as somebody who doesn't get it, you'll be seen as somebody who does get it. You won't be seen as having failed, you will be seen as somebody who's trying to succeed. And that was it was a really powerful lesson, and for me, I sort of learned it, but she articulated it. And I guess that's what I would say, ask for help, ask for help. Just ask for help.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome, and it's been a pleasure.